Sunshine State isn't the only place lacking sunshine. Several different regions are at risk for severe weather. We'll dive into each just ahead. Molly.
And helping fuel the
one part of using that abundance of caution when you're at the beach is knowing what those flags mean. The flags that you see communicate different beach hazards or the safety level at which you can swim. One you might not know so readily is the purple flag, which is used for wildlife. So if you have sharks spotted in the area, a high concentration of jellyfish or stingrays. So when you see that purple flag flying, it often means you have kind of dangerous beach life around, and you need to be cognizant of that. The other hazard flags show a medium risk with yellow. When you get up to red, that red flag flying, dangerous to be swimming on the beach. And then when you see those double red flags, you should not be swimming. Especially if you see those red flags, you want to make sure that you're near the lifeguards, but just using an abundance of caution. In terms of the rip current risk today, we've got a bit of a risk here around portions of the Florida Panhandle. So if you're going to be there, say in Destin, keep that in mind. Some rip currents are possible. South Padre Island, it's going to be a hot one. Look at that water temperature, 91 degrees. That's not going to cool you off very much if you're getting in the water there at South Padre Island. Corpus Christi, those storms mainly later this afternoon. Going to feel like the triple digits, so make sure you're hydrating, taking some break from the heat. For Galveston, we've got some showers around this morning. Temperatures in the upper 80s, a little bit of a light breeze. Factor in the humidity. It's going to feel warmer than that, though. Low rip current risk up and down the southeast coast, but of course you still want to use caution, swim carefully. In Miami, as Molly was just showing us, a chance for storms pretty much on and off all day today. A southwesterly breeze helping to usher in all that moisture that we're talking about as well. Vero Beach, you're going to be in the lower 90s. That water temp just off the beach, 81 degrees. Not going to complain about that, although today is not going to be a great beach day. Daytona Beach is going to be hot. You might want to get in that water to dry off, but Steph, you got to keep an eye to the sky. Daytona Beach is going to have some breaks, but you just want to make sure if you're hearing any thunder, seeing any lightning, you're going inside really quickly.
Yeah, it is, and I know it feels like summer.
Today, you can see maybe some delays for Denver, and then certainly some possible there around the Orlando airports today as well. We've got that possibility for some fog if you're heading out across portions of Tennessee, southern Kentucky. Nashville, you're waking up to a dense fog advisory that's stretching up through Bowling Green and London. That dense fog advisory for Nashville until 8 a.m. You've got visibilities down to a quarter of a mile, which of course could make that morning commute a bit hazardous. Make sure you're giving yourself some extra time, especially if you travel one of those interstates, which we know the fog can greatly impact and really slow that travel down. Currently seeing just the quarter mile of visibility around London, but you'll notice while we're getting a 7-mile report of visibility there in Nashville, that is coming from the airport. There will certainly be lower visibility in pockets along I-40. So make sure you're giving yourself some extra time. You're not rushing. You don't want to be like speeding along and find yourself in some dense fog with 0 miles of visibility. We've got some thunderstorms rushing toward that 95 corridor. Maybe they woke you up this morning in Columbia, South Carolina. We've got some heavy rain coming along with those as well. That possibility for some severe storms, maybe some damaging wind, a bit of hail for cities like Savannah as we head through the day today. And then you'll notice it's going to be a very wet forecast from about I-4 into South Florida with that possibility for rounds of rain. Places like Fort Myers, I would say you kind of just have to keep an eye to the sky, but it's just going to be round after round after round. Some of those will stay offshore. Some of those will move through quickly, but I do expect that at some point we're going to start to have some flash flooding issues because we're just going to have so much rain. The ground is going to be saturated. 75, they're going to have rounds of rain on and off throughout the day into tomorrow as well. So it's just going to be a very wet time. We've got several very, very wet days ahead for much of the state of Florida, from central Florida down through South Florida. Heavy rain at times. And of course, as we know, Molly, it floods really easy across portions of South Florida anyways. So it could be problematic this week.
Yeah, especially in Miami
and stuff. That's exactly what the atmosphere is going to do. And it's got plenty of moisture to work with. I think a big story before all is said and done today is going to be some of that flash flooding that we see coming out of Florida. So this is what we're looking at. We've got high pressure building west. Now, depending on where this sets itself up, it could either be, you know, pretty nice weather if it's taking over the weather across Florida, or it can just help direct that moisture right across the state. And that is what we're seeing. The reds that you see here indicative of that deep tropical moisture coming up from the Caribbean, taking hold not only across Florida, it's going to impact much of the Gulf Coast, but we're really focusing on those rounds of rain across the state of Florida. We've got upper level winds, a dip in the jet stream north, well north of the southeast, but that is helping to pull up that tropical moisture. It is kind of impacting the whole flow of all of our weather regime. When you have big synoptic scale where really large players like the jet stream helping to pull that moisture north. It's really, really efficient. That surge of tropical moisture is what we're seeing from I-4 south across South Florida into the middle of the week. And this is deep tropical moisture, guys. The atmosphere has so much moisture, so much rain to work with. And that's why we're looking at the possibility for maybe 8 to 12 inches of rain in some places, a broad brush of 5 to 8 inches from Tampa all the way down through Fort Myers, Miami, West Palm, getting in on that Belglade. That possibility for you as well with rounds of showers before all is said and done. You see it here, the red, 8 to 12 inches. Now, this is a broad brush forecast through Friday. This is kind of a mashup of the different long range forecasts. I will say, while you only see a little blip of 8 to 12 inches on the forecast map here, I would not be surprised if we see locally higher amounts, more widespread areas seeing at least 8 to 12 inches where we get some of those storms to continue over and over and over again because the atmosphere is just juiced, guys. You're going to have some heavy, blinding rain. This is going to be what everyone's talking about in Florida as we head through this week. Look at this, rounds of rain starting out your Tuesday morning along that 75 corridor, along 95. Alligator Alley is going to be soaked. The Keys getting in on this as well. You guys are going to have rounds of pummeling tropical rain. Going to have some winds gusting along with this as well. This would have been the just worst week to end up in Florida on vacation. I hope that's not how anyone is spending their week. Look at the forecast for Tampa. Going from 92 today, a mix of sun and clouds, to just storms in the forecast. 'Tis the rainy season. It is the time of year that we expect this. But when you're talking about not just the scattered storms, Molly, but you're talking about storms that are kind of in the forecast pretty much on and off all day, 4 days, that's there, Molly. Thanks. Well, this year conditions are shaping up to be a very active hurricane season, but understanding the past can help prepare for the future. Here's some top facts about hurricanes. Of course, this is the latest. It's been in quite some time that we've gone without a named storm, but that doesn't mean you want to let your guard down. It's always crazy to me. I've already seen people talking about like, oh, this season, it's not adding up to what it's going to be. And I'm like, well, it just started. Just hold that thought a little bit. You can see what we've got going on here in terms of the wind shear, where you're seeing some of those magentas. We've got that showing up. The wind shear is our friend when we're talking about hurricane season because that will help tear those storms away. But as you saw, near Florida, that's about it. There's not a ton of wind shear going on out there right now. No tropical development expected in the next 7 days. But when we do move through June, we typically see that development closer to home around the Gulf. As we've seen, the waters of the Gulf are steaming right now. I think just off the coast of Corpus Christi, it was around 91 degrees around the Caribbean as well. So they're closer to home. As we head through the later portions of hurricane season, we start to see the main development region firing up a little bit more. We've got 99% of the season left. You'll notice our peak here statistically around September 10th, but it begins to really ramp up as we head through August. But by and large, that's related to the water temperatures, the atmospheric conditions that we see. And we have water temperatures that are about as warm right now as they should be in July and August. So any storms that do get going are going to mature and strengthen pretty easily. The beach safety hazard flags, when you're getting up to red, that's dangerous. Double red means don't swim. If you see those red flags, you want to make sure that you are, one, a strong swimmer, but also near a lifeguard if possible, because even the strongest swimmers can't fight those rip currents. Speaking of rip currents today, low for much of the East Coast, moderate for portions of the panhandle of Florida. Of course, if you find yourself stuck in one of those rip currents, you want to just kind of wait it out, let it take you out, and then swim parallel to shore and in. You don't want to try to fight it. That will wear you out. The beach forecast for today for Long Beach, New York, temperatures in the lower 70s. Nice mix of sun and clouds. Water, personally a little too cold. I'm not getting in at 66 degrees, but you know, you do you if you're fine with that. Chatham, a bit of cloud cover hanging around 62. Molly, are you getting in on that?
No.
62? And that's days. You're going to have to keep them out. And the Sunshine State isn't the only place lacking sunshine. Several different regions are at risk for severe weather. We'll dive into each just ahead. Molly? And helping. So yeah, just really sad situations there. One of the important things to keep you safe if you're headed to the beach is to know what those beach flags mean. And if you happen to see this purple flag, which maybe you're not quite as familiar with, it means that dangerous marine wildlife have been spotted. So we're talking about sharks in the area or a high concentration of jellyfish, which you don't want to find yourself dealing with, stingrays either. So it's important to know what those flags mean. Of course, green flag flying when you're talking about those hazard flags looks pretty good. But as you're starting to get up into the red flag, that means it's dangerous. If you're going to be at the beach, swim near one of the lifeguards if you want to get in the water. But if you see those double red flags flying, do not swim. You don't want to be swimming when you have those double red flags. It can get dangerous really quickly, even for the most experienced swimmers. Looking at the rip current risk today around the Gulf, we've got that moderate risk for rip currents for portions of the Florida Panhandle, but otherwise looking at pretty low rip current risks. Still, though, you want to swim with caution and near a lifeguard if possible. South Padre Island, Texas, look at this, 91 degrees. That's how warm the water is. That's not going to cool you off very much. It's like a hot tub out there. Corpus Christi, you've got that chance for some storms mainly later today. The water there in the mid-80s, so still pretty warm. Gulf of Mexico is just basically boiling right now. Galveston, you've got that chance for some storms and rain around early this morning. Temperatures in the upper 80s, but it's going to feel more like the triple digits. So if you're out, make sure you're taking breaks, staying hydrated, getting some relief from that heat. Looking at the rip current risk up through the Carolinas to the Outer Banks, low rip current risk for the east coast of the Atlantic there. Miami, as we've shown you over and over, the chance for storms on and off throughout the day today. The Atlantic at 87 degrees is still very warm there. Vero Beach, again, that chance for storms continuing. You're going to have especially that chance for lightning, very, very heavy rain in Vero Beach. Not a great beach day. Daytona Beach, your rain chance is a little bit lower, but the trade-off for that stuff is that it's going to be 96 degrees and it's going to feel even hotter than that. So it's like, yeah, you might not be getting as many storms, but you're going to be just sweating it out completely.
Yeah, but that rain and cloud will eventually.
Molly. Well, time now for your Monday morning front lines. A massive number. So you hate to see that stuff, especially when you're not even in the peak just yet.
It feels like everywhere.
You're rounding out a nice long weekend and traveling today. If you did, welcome to Monday. I hope you have smooth travels. Could be impacted by weather, though. You can see our forecast wherever you see the little gold bubbles here from Orlando up through Atlanta, much of Texas, all the way out to Seattle. We could see some weather-related airport impacts, so keep that in mind. Of course, those delays don't always have to be for bad weather where you are. It could be for where your plane is coming from. So that's always something that can kind of catch you. Dealing with some fog out there this morning, a dense fog advisory stretching from Bristol all the way over through Nashville, getting into Jackson, Tennessee as well. Portions of the I-40 corridor are going to be stuck in some dense fog at times, so keep that in mind. You can see our visibility around Nashville, at least at the airport there, is 4 miles. But where you see these darker kind of shading colors, that is indicative of some lower visibility. You could be driving along just fine right along I-40, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in greatly reduced visibility. So give yourself some extra time for this Monday morning, up to about 1.5 miles in London. That's an improvement over the 1/4 mile that we were earlier about an hour ago. Some thunderstorms have been racing toward the coast here of South Carolina. That's going to close in on you in Charleston. Myrtle Beach probably woke you up this morning with that thunder and lightning. Wet on 95 in some places. Some of those storms could be a little bit feisty. We've got that possibility for some damaging winds, a bit of hail as well as we move through the day today. 75 and 95 down through the Sunshine State. Going to be more like the rain state today, especially for those main corridors. It is going to be one of those days where you just have to accept that everyone around you, not you, but everyone around you is a terrible driver. So give yourself some extra time and pack your patience. That's what I tell myself every morning when I head out. Give yourself some extra time. You're going to have heavy rain. You're going to have that possibility for flash flooding, some gusty winds as well. Tuesday, we're keeping that rain in the forecast, and then it continues for the next several days. Molly, do you do that too, Molly? You just remind yourself that no one else can drive except you, so you got to give yourself some extra.
Instead of the classic,
it's you. And the rain. They do. And then rounds and rounds of rain continuing for the next several days. So let's plan it out for you, because when you're talking about the type of moisture that we're going to see, it is going to add up really quickly. So we have high pressure over the Bahamas. Now, depending on where this sets up, if it's kind of in control of our weather completely, that could mean beautiful weather across Florida. But that is not what we're getting out of this. It's set up to the point just far enough east that it is just directing the moisture right into the state of Florida, into the Gulf of Mexico as well. Deep tropical moisture, that's what's represented by these reds that you're seeing here. That is helping to steer the moisture northward. But it's not just the steering around that high pressure. It's also the pooling from the dip in the jet stream that we have to the north. So that dip in the jet stream north of that is helping pull that tropical moisture northward across Florida. And when you have this type of moisture, I know we think of Florida as being a tropical climate anyways, but when you have this type of intensely deep tropical moisture, it is going to mean that you could get rainfall rates 1-2 inches an hour, maybe even higher than that. And that's when you start to see that flash flooding becoming more likely. Heavy rainfall, that is going to add up in a big way across much of Florida. This is a broad brush forecast that you're seeing here. This is through Friday, so this is for the week. And you'll notice anywhere that you're seeing the orange, 5 to 8 inches. But when we say broad brush forecast, what we mean is this is where we're likely to see some of the higher totals, but we're not going to rule out some locally higher amounts or some areas seeing maybe 8 to 12 inches where we get some of those storms to line up one after another. So you'll notice we've got that influx of moisture, waves of rain moving across South Florida up into Central Florida as we head through the afternoon and evening. From I-4 south is just going to be awash with rain and storms. Tuesday heading into the evening, Tampa, Fort Myers, Vero Beach are all in it. And then you see it doesn't change a whole lot. We're continuing to see this kind of water hose of atmospheric moisture just aimed across this area. That 75 corridor, it's just going to be a mess. Getting over to 95 as well for places like, say, Tampa. Today, a mix of sun and clouds, but watch what happens. We get those storms to move in, thunderstorms on and off for the rest of the week. Now, you will notice you get a little bit of a dip in the temperature from 92 on Monday to 85 on Tuesday, but you're still going to factor in the humidity. It's still going to feel muggy and hot. So, yeah, maybe not quite as hot, but still feeling it, especially with that type of tropical moisture in the air. When you're talking about this much atmospheric moisture, it is so hard for your body to cool off. That's why it feels so much more strenuous when you're running in the dew points. Your dew point's 73 in the morning. You're just waiting for the rain later, and it just feels like you cannot sweat to cool off, and that's what's happening. And Molly, that's kind of what we're going to be dealing with. When you're not getting the rain, there's going to be so much atmospheric moisture in the air that it's going to be like, I wish it would just rain.
I'm thinking about, too, in between the rain showers, the heat builds back in really quickly, gets really steamy.
Yeah.
There's also a bunch of mosquitoes that come out, too. So even when you have...
Keep an eye on that, Molly. And this year, conditions are shaping up to be a very active hurricane season. But understanding the past can help prepare for the future. Here are some top facts about hurricanes. Yeah, time now to get prepared because you don't want to be waiting until a storm is barreling down on you. Now, I want to show you this. Wind shear is an enemy of a hurricane, of a tropical system. And you'll notice not a whole lot of wind shear anywhere going on, with the exception of the wind shear that we've got around the northern Gulf and there around Florida, which is actually pretty good news when you're talking about kind of the unsettledness that we have going on there, although no hinting at anything currently. You see that here. No tropical development expected in the next 7 days. Hurricane season off to a late start with our first named storm not happening yet, but that does not mean we want to let our guard down. You can see when we start to see storms forming in June, typically they're very close to home, the Gulf, the Eastern Atlantic, so we typically have very little time to prepare when we are talking about those storms that begin to bubble up in June. Still 99% of the hurricane season left, and you'll notice it really begins to tick up here as we head through August. The statistical peak of hurricane season around September 10th, and then you'll notice we've got a secondary little peak there that typically happens in October. Again, with our beach safety flags, if you are swimming, great thing to know during the summer, but also during hurricane season, 2 flags don't swim. Probably with that type of weather. Well, the Sunshine State isn't the only place lacking sunshine. Several different regions are at risk for severe weather. We'll dive into each just ahead. Molly? And helping ever want to experience. But knowing the beach hazard flags can help you with that in some ways. One of the things that you want to look out for, especially when you're talking about sharks being spotted in the area or other dangerous marine wildlife, is that purple flag. So if you see the purple flag flying, there could be sharks, jellyfish, stingrays. And I guarantee you, if you see a lifeguard and you ask them why the purple flag is up, they can tell you what is going on, whether it's sharks or jellyfish or what it is. The other flags that you see more often, the yellow flag meaning medium risk, red flag dangerous. If you see one red flag flying, you definitely want to try to swim closer to those lifeguards. But if you see the double red flag flying, you should not be swimming at all. So do keep that in mind. In terms of the rip current risk, we've got a moderate risk for rip currents across portions of the Florida Panhandle. If you're in Destin, be careful swimming. Otherwise, around the Gulf, we're seeing low rip current risks today, but we are seeing bath water, basically. Water 90 degrees there around South Padre Island, Texas. 88, you've got about 10 minutes before you burn without sunscreen there. Corpus Christi, the chance for some afternoon storms. We're sitting at 94, but it's going to feel like the triple digits. So make sure you're cooling off, drinking plenty of water, getting some breaks from the heat as well. And to Galveston, where you've got a mix of sun and clouds, look at that water temperature there, 86 degrees. So it's not going to cool you off a whole lot, but it could be just what you need if you are at the beach. In terms of those rip currents, taking a closer look, Apalachicola around there, that moderate risk of rip currents for the Florida Panhandle. In Miami, as we've said over and over again, much of Florida is going to have rounds of storms, not only today, but throughout the week, Steph. So got to keep an eye to the sky if you're trying to get to the beaches there.
That we do, but one good thing about
stuck in a messy pattern there too, Molly. Thanks. Well, time now for your Monday morning front lines. A massive chunk of September, so certainly a bit earlier to be seeing that stuff, and certainly concerning there.
Yeah, feels like everywhere.
Maybe you took a nice long weekend. Maybe you're kicking your Monday off with travel back home. Well, if you are, thanks for sticking with us. And you might run into some travel delays in the air. You can see where we're expecting the possibility of some airport impacts, weather-wise, at least across Texas. A couple big hubs affected there. Denver, maybe a few weather-related delays for you. And then Orlando, any of those Florida airports down into Miami as well, Fort Lauderdale, could be seeing some delays because we've got quite a stormy pattern there. We're seeing delays this morning in terms of fog around Nashville, over into Bristol, up to London. Bowling Green included in that dense fog advisory. We've had visibility down to a quarter of a mile in some places. Now, I don't want you to be fooled as you look at this and you say, oh, well, 10 miles of visibility in Nashville. That is the specific monitoring that's going on at the airport. But as you'll notice, what we're seeing here on the visibility map, there are some pockets of greatly reduced visibility along I-40, along I-65. So you could be going along just fine. Everything's moving just fine. All of a sudden, you find yourself in some greatly reduced visibility. So just give yourself a little extra time this morning. You don't want to be rushing, especially if you're taking I-40, I-65. I-75 is going to be a little wet here around Sarasota. We've got some storms moving in, and this is going to be kind of the story of the next several days. You can see the general trajectory of these storms. They're moving out of the southwest. They're lifting north. That is accompanying all of our tropical moisture. That's going to be impacting the Sunshine State over the next couple days. I-4 southward today. You've got rounds and rounds of heavy rain at times. We've got that possibility for some stronger storms across portions of southern Georgia as well. Savannah included in that. Timing this out for you from Fort Myers down through Everglades City. Windshield wipers are going to be working overtime. Rounds of rain. This is kind of my least favorite type of forecast to have to deal with, because it's not like we can be like, here's your specific time frame, here's when it's going to rain and storm. It's like, well, at any point over the next several days, you're going to have rounds of rain. Heavy rain at times could cause some flash flooding, some gusty winds as well. So you just got to keep an eye to the sky. Molly, I think we're going to start to see some flash flooding issues before all is said and done, especially for some of the more urban areas in South Florida.
Which it takes a lot to flood.
All right, it is Monday, and we're kicking off your week, at least in Florida, with rain, and not your typical rain. I know it's rainy season, so everyone's like, of course it's going to rain. It rains every day in rainy season. It's a different type of rain that we have. Now, our setup that we've got going on, we've got our high pressure hanging out around the Bahamas. Now, if you can get the high pressure to take over your weather in Florida, especially South Florida, it's fantastic. If it completely takes over, if it's just directing your weather, that's when you run into problems, and that is part of what we're seeing. You can see the direction around this high pressure just taking all of that moisture and funneling it up across the Keys, across South Florida into Central Florida as well. And we have deep tropical moisture to work with. We're talking about just an atmosphere that is loaded with moisture that's going to be wrung out with these showers and storms, and it's going to lead us to that possibility of some flash flooding. So the other atmospheric players that are helping with this forecast, we've got a dip in the jet stream north of this, and this helps to act as kind of like a vacuum to pull that tropical moisture north as well. So a couple different things coming together that are going to bring us that chance for just tons of rain, deep tropical downpours, and that's going to last pretty much all week. We're not seeing any major breaks coming out of this. Now, we are going to see that possibility for rain adding up in a big way, 5 to 8 inches wherever you're seeing this orange, but I cannot stress enough, this is through Friday. And this is a broad brush forecast. We are certainly going to see some locally higher amounts, and some of those could be even higher than 5 to 8 inches, which, as we know, that could result in some flooding, especially some flash flooding. So here's what we're looking at today. Here's 6 o'clock. Portions of that 95 corridor between Vero Beach and the Space Coast going to be dealing with some heavy rain coming down. Portions of Central Florida, Lake O, rounds of storms moving across you. Just a deluge of moisture starting off your Tuesday morning along the 75 corridor. That's going to continue building in across South Florida Tuesday night into early Wednesday. Wednesday, your lunch hour, a lot more of the same. Tampa, you guys are going to be soggy. You're going to be swamped. Fort Myers, same thing for you. Keys, down in the Keys, you're getting rounds and rounds of rain and storms. Here's the forecast for Tampa. Today in the lower 90s, you'll notice a bit of a dip in the temperatures by Tuesday, but your trade-off is those storms, consistent storms. And the other trade-off is the humidity. When you're talking about deep tropical moisture, that's not just relating to how much rain you're going to get or your rain chances. That's also talking about your dew point, and that means you are going to just be feeling like a sauna. I know we're used to the humidity in Florida, but this is going to be humidity on a different type of level. Even when you're waking up in the morning to go for your run, it is going to feel stifling. And Molly, it's like, you know, I know we've both been in tropical climates where you're getting up and you want to go get your morning workout in, or you want to spend some time outdoors, and as soon as you step outside, it's like a sauna. I can't breathe.
I can just go get breakfast instead.
Yeah, just a little like
inside sounds
fruit.
nice.
Yeah, AC. I agree.
A lot of people.
Summer is truly in the air, and that means it's a perfect time to get into the outdoors. But access to the nation's beauty isn't always easily accessible to everyone.
That's where our guest, Kiwan Harmon, comes in. He is the coordinator for Ladders to the Outdoors program and is looking to bridge the gap in access for future generations in New York State. We're so glad you came to talk about this. So what is kind of the overall gist of the program?
Well, thank you guys.
She is done there too. I saw a wide variety.
Everything you could possibly want. And with that, why is it so important to make nature and the outdoors more accessible for everyone? I mean, you see the smiles, so that's part of it, but there's so many more reasons.
Well, I mean,
Let's talk about the logistics, because it must be a huge undertaking. And also, is this for kids and adults alike? Because I am seeing a mix of age in there.
Yeah, so the Ladders program, we serve any kids from 5 to 18 or within that, kindergarten to 12th grade range.
Okay, so we're seeing, some of the pictures, and you were just talking to us about the time taking to build it up. So what's your hope for the future? Do you hope to see things expand? Do you want to add other areas?
Yeah, so, as we continue to build the program.
You're making some core memories for a lot of kids out there. Kiwan Harmon from Ladders to Outdoors, thank you so much for what you do and for joining us this morning.
All right.
Yeah, amazing stuff there. Of course, maybe you're getting outdoors to walk the dog.
In some places, it's going to be